There
I
you go.
you see it now.
I see it.
Okay, good. All right, so again, I'm Dan Hickman, CTO of Pro Model Corporation. What I want to do in the next 20 minutes is talk about some of these inevitable changes, but more importantly, demonstrate how we've solved one of these, mimicking a real life situation we did with one of our FutureFlow customers today. So I appreciate the voting. It looks like 86% shortage of staff, reconstruction projects around 30%. Repurposing beds and space, that's a big thing right now with the COVID situation. And then, kind of recognizing that within a year, there's a summer season and there's a flu season, and routinely we have to synchronize our units and bed sizing to match the new patient mix and different arrival patterns. Maybe surgery's high on a certain day and you want to figure out how many beds you're going to need to satisfy it. What I want to do is I want to go through how we handled adding to a decision of a reconstruction project. Hypothetically, move back in time, pretend it is July 2nd, 2020, and we have a FutureFlow customer. They have a digital twin that's up and ready. It's updating itself every hour. And what they needed some help in deciding is if we wanted to close 10 beds on this unit Flex 1 at Hospital 1 with a target date of around July 23rd, if we do that, can we help them understand the impact on holds, census of downstream units, bed availability, placement in preferred beds, does that go up or goes down? And then depending on what we see in those, can we look at and explore different what ifs around handling it and minimizing the impact? Before we get into the demo, I think it's good to kind of share with you some of the details and really plays to what I think makes FutureFlow unique and good at solving these types of problems. So we're using a fictitious hospital. It's a 2-hospital system. It has around 480 beds spread out over 20 plus units. The use case here is, what if we went from 15 beds down to 5 starting July 23rd and bringing it back up sometime in the future? And if you focus your attention to the right-hand side, the table here, what this is telling you is that unit Flex _H1 is a preferred bed at providing the PICU level of care, but it's an overflow bed for NICU and SICU. So X's mean overflow, and the P stands for a preferred. And so what I'm really trying to show is that this is pretty complex, that across 7 units and across 3 different care levels, there's a lot of interdependency. And it's really tough for me, just to think through, well, if I took 10 out, not only what is the impact on the PICU, but what is the impact on the SICU and NICU, right? And it's hard for me, and to keep in mind that there are probably 20 more other units and other different types of care levels that are going on at any given time. So this critical care placement, this makes it hard for you to intuitively solve it, but computers are pretty good at it. Add to the complexity that at any given time, the hospital has, FutureFlow thinks of it in kind of 2 groups. We have the known patients that are there right now, and they have a mix to them of different services, different levels of care, how long they've been there, their comorbidities, their diagnosis, and things like that. But we also know that as we predict into the future, there's going to be additional demand placed on it. And FutureFlow is really good at knowing what historically what comes in. So you have this laundry list of services, and again, how can you effectively try to predict reducing 10 units would have with such complexity in this hospital? So I'll have to jump into the demo and walk you through it. Here's the process. First, I'm going to show the as is. Let's do nothing. What if we just simulate the next 45 days and we don't shut down the 10? What does that look like? And what if I just ran a scenario unconstrained, pretend like I had unlimited beds? but then I want to evaluate multiple potential 2Bs. Now, when it comes to shutting down the 10, just there's more than these two, but for this webinar, I'm going to talk about two of, let's just do it all at once, July 23rd, and then let's bring them back on 2 weeks later. But another approach is maybe a little staggered, where we just slowly bring it down and we slowly bring it up. Let's see the impact of that. And once we know what those predictions are telling us and we know the impact, we're going to probably want to look at other scenarios driven off of that to try to minimize the impact that these changes could make. Okay, so as we're going through this, the desired takeaways are, it's when you have a digital twin always ready to go, you're more likely to leverage it versus if you had to build one and it takes a couple weeks for someone to design the model and clean the data up and all that. Just having it ready, you're more likely to use it on these, these daily decisions that come in. I want you to understand how we use the what if scenario analysis module. What's the approach? How do we build these baselines and create scenarios and then create other scenarios off of the results of previous scenarios? Walk you through that and then give you a feeling of the who, what, when, who uses this module, who's a consumer, who's a creator. All right, so let me jump over to FutureFlow. All right, so a very, very quick environment overview. I'm in the what if module, and I might refer to it as the WISA, which is an acronym for what if scenario analysis. And this is kind of broken into a top part and a bottom part. The top part are all my scenarios, and this is like a self-service scenario creator. We would train, typically the role of the creators are your patient flow improvement or data analyst or machine learning groups. Little more technical folks is who we would train here to build the scenarios. The consumer of the scenarios would be your clinicians and other C-level folks that they might request those scenarios to be created by this other group. So this is, but I hope you walk away with is that it's, even though I'm targeting more of a data analyst role, one of the design goals was to make creating scenarios extremely easy. And I want to walk you through that. So the top part is all the scenarios and the bottom part is all the reports. So I'm in an analysis. I can give that analysis a name. I'm calling it the Reconstruction Project July 23rd. And the snapshot that I built this analysis from was July 2nd, 2020 at 10 a.m. I could choose any one for my analysis. Quick reminder is that every hour, basically FutureFlow is creating another snapshot of what are the heads in the beds and the state of every bed. And we can always drive a model off of that. It's already been, all the data's been cleaned up and transformed and it's ready to go in a model. So I built one starting July 2nd, fictitiously we're moving back in time. And they're looking at July 23rd, let's shut down 10 beds. So here's the baseline. Pretty much an analysis, you always get a baseline. It's the as is, no changes whatsoever. You're going to see that I've created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At first, I want to just talk about 2 though, and show you the input changes. We're simulating for 45 days out into the future. And with the all at once, I'm basically saying in the Flex H1 on July 23rd, go down to 5, and bring back to 15 on the 6th, right? And so for me to create this arrow, I literally hit the add button, I give it a name, I go into this bed screen, and I can just fill this out. The other one we did was staggered. So this one we're saying on the 23rd, go to 12, on the 27th, go to 9, 31st, go to 5. So every 3 to 4 days, bring it down 3. And once we've reached our 10, bring it back up. This goes longer than the other one. So we're basically evaluating, should I do it all at once in 2 weeks, or should I go a little slower, and which one creates, more pain for the hospital? All right. And I'm going to, there are a couple other scenarios, but I promise I'll walk through those more in a little bit. So the first thing, so we have all of our scenarios up here, and there are multiple reports that we can access. I'm only going to show you 2 of the available today because I think it gives us most of the input or output that we wanted out of the analysis. So we'll start out in the census time series. We start out on July 2nd. We're simulating 45 days. And this is showing you just a baseline. So whatever I check up above will show the reports down below. So that's key to FutureFlow's understanding, is that we're a multi-scenario approach, and we're always trying to encourage you to create a lot of scenarios and compare them side by side. So in the baseline, we can see we have 480 beds. The blue line is how many beds are totally in the system. And then this is the predicted census over time. I'm plotting this out hourly for 45 days. Now, one of the things that I think one of the biggest value statements that we have is that because we model, like Kyle was showing, at that patient resolution, where we mimic the real life hospital operations and how they flow through, we can also report down at that really low level. So the heart and soul of this use case is, what if we take Flex 1 from 15 to 10? This is the baseline, and you can see just this is a pretty heavily utilized unit. Sometimes we dip down to 12, but most of the time we're sitting kind of maxed out, right? And if I'm going to now, I'm going to click on 2 other scenarios, and I'm going to turn off one of these series here. This is a great visual of the 2 scenarios. I'm only plotting the capacity. So this blue line is the 15, the as is. This is all at once, is the green, turning it on and off. And this is the staggered. So great visual of what we're really trying to experiment with. And then now if I look at census, you can see here, this is the prediction when I make those different changes of staggered or not. What do we predict the census to be? And really this gap, this orange is the baseline. This gap right here is the heart and soul of the answer we're looking at. When we take out 10 beds, where does this difference, where do they go, and how do they impact the rest of the system? All right. So earlier I was showing you in the slides, we had 7 units. Each of those, and they all kind of share. They're sometimes preferred, they're sometimes overflow. So let's take a look at the impact across the system. We'll look at first, let's look at PICU H1. I'm going to go quick because I realize it's 3:46 and I don't want to waste all of our time, and I got more to go to. So I'm going to go a little quicker here. But comparing the 3 census, I'm not seeing much of a difference. PICU 1 is a preferred unit for the PICU care level. So I'm not seeing much of it. I mean, it's gaining a little bit, but not much. If I look at NICU 2, definitely see like this orange one, that is the baseline. But when we take out 10, we now fill up what used to be like some excess beds are no longer excess, because now we're filling it up. This is where some of that gap of 10 patients are going. They're going to this NICU. If I go to NICU H1, this was the preferred bed. He's a very busy unit. There's not much of an impact. We're not really overflowing to it in terms of that. And we'll go to the CPCU. This is a unit that, turn on the capacity line, is generally not as busy as some of the other one. This is the progressive care unit. You're definitely seeing here the baselines down here. It is this change of closing 10, patients are definitely going there for sure. And then the final one of the shared, there's a couple more, but I'm gonna go fast, is the SICU. And you definitely see the SICU 1 receiving additional patients. The baseline's down here with that change. We're definitely seeing them overflow over to here instead of being at that 15 size flex. All right, so we've answered kind of one of the questions so far, which is what happens to the census to other units when we make this change? And one of the most valuable reports that we can talk about is our holds. And with limited time, I'll say that we have customized ways of defining what holds are. And this version here, we're basically saying, if you waited for your first bed longer than I think it's default in the 60 minutes, we consider you a hold and we count them up over time. So the baseline, the as is, there are holds in this system. It's a pretty busy hospital and people are holding. But if I make that change to like all at once or staggered, you can see it gets worse, right? Pretty significantly worse I'll toggle on and off. There's the baseline in the red. Here's the all at once, and here's the staggered. So basically what we did now, this is a case where you've made some scenarios, you've figured out what it looks like. Now what we want to do is we say, okay, I don't really like what that looks like. Can I take it a step further? And I'm going to go really quick here and say what, and this mimics exactly what we did with one of our customers. They basically said, let's take a unit that's underutilized from, in this July 23rd time period. And even though, and like the PICU here, moving flex down is really impacting the PICU. This is before the closure. There's 5 units. It said go here first. This is kind of what Kyle's demo was showing you. If the PICU has availability, great. If the flex has it, great. Else go to these overflow. And we're taking this down 10 to 5. What they asked us to do is to create a scenario of the 2 different options where we, at the scenario level, we say, you know what? Let's throw a third preferred. For this short period of time, temporarily, let's let the progressive care unit take some of this load that we're losing, and have it be a preferred. Hopefully then we can bring up that, we can not be so risky at the SICU. They really wanted the, it was too risky to leave it with such high constraint. So now when we do that, I've already created those scenarios and I ran them. And if I compare it versus the other one, you can see this is the original, is the blue. But when we shift the CPU as another placement decision criteria for the PICU, that we are actually bringing holds down, right? So we're starting to minimize some of the impact. If I do the same thing staggered versus without it, we are definitely improving it, right? And now if you look at and just compare that to the baseline, something interesting I think happens where the staggered with the CPCU is actually improved it more than the original baseline's predicted holds. So in the end, so this is the classic example, right? You build your baseline, you do your scenarios, you analyze those, that creates other scenarios, and it's a very iterative thing. You work yourself out of it. You say, okay, I know what my intuition told me. I thought it would be this. Does the simulation support it? Building new scenarios is all about your institutional knowledge and in knowing what the art of the possible is. And so I'll say that what you could do in addition to what I demonstrated is maybe July 23rd is not a good date. So maybe you want to figure out a better date or not, or maybe you said, I don't want to use the CPCU. Is there a better solution than the CPCU? Maybe it's geographically closer to the other PICUs. Or maybe you just say, I want to stand up and make a new unit and create that, and it's only going to live for 2 weeks or something like that. These are the types of what ifs. If I bring it full circle, every single day there's things going on, there's real life happening. And if you have the digital twin and you have the ability to just easily create scenarios on the fly to support your intuition, that institutional knowledge you've had, I think that you're in a better position.